You may slowly open your eyes. Now that we're all here in a relaxed zone, vibrating at the same vibration. This might be too loud. Yeah, I think it's too loud. I would like to talk and share a little bit about trust. Trust with a capital T. Not your trust or necessarily my trust, but the universal trust. Three of my favorite words in the English language are trust, trust, and trust. I have other favorite words too, but these are three of my favorites. So trust. We all have abilities, we all have talents. We're all very good at certain things. But what is trust? Universal trust. Trust with capital letters. And this is something we all do unconsciously. We all trust, all the time. Often we're not aware of it. When we wake up in the morning, we trust that we are going to wake up. When we get out of bed and we put our feet on the ground, we trust that the ground is going to be there to hold us. When we go and open the tap of water, we trust the water is going to come out. We are constantly trusting, but we mostly do it unconsciously. And this is the trust that Jen was talking about, I think. We all have trust within us. We just have to start paying attention to it. When we go to bed at night, we trust that our heart is going to know what it's going to do. When we eat food, we trust that our digestive system is going to digest the food. Do we not? We need to start paying more attention to this. It is believed that most of our decisions, maybe up to 80% of them, are done unconsciously. And about 20% of what we decide and we act on and we do is done consciously. So the idea about trust is born within us. We all have it, whether we're aware of it or not. And what I'd like us to do, and what I'd like to invite you to do, is to become aware a bit more of this trust. About 30 years ago, I woke up to this trust. I found this trust, or this trust found me. I managed to tap into this trust, and this trust has given me the courage to do what I've been doing for the last 30 years, without fail. Whether the road is bumpy, whether it's up or down, whether there's money in the bank or not, whether I know where my next meal is coming from, just because I had this trust that I woke up to and became aware of. So, this universal trust is always with us, from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep. It's like a cradle in which we all rest. So it is believed or said that about 80% of what we believe and how we act is done unconsciously. So how can we tap into this unconscious belief that's within us? It is there. We need to become more aware of it. We all have two hemispheres to our brain, the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere. The left hemisphere is the intellectual hemisphere, analytical, language, logic, reason, masculine. The right hemisphere is intuition, feminine, the compassionate, the creative. In the Western educational system, we are taught to focus on the left hemisphere, on the logic. We are taught to fear the unknown. We are taught to fear our intuition. We are taught to fear creativity. This is deeply installed within us from when we were infants. We are told to be logical, to be reasonable, to think before we act. We are somehow taught to neglect and ignore the fear of the right side of the brain, the intuitive, the feminine side of the brain. But the reality is we use that side of our brain unconsciously all the time. Creativity, it's a wide spectrum, a very wide spectrum. And we're all familiar with this spectrum at a certain level. On one beginning level of creativity, something that we all do unconsciously. For example, we can drive a car down a freeway, a highway, navigating traffic, navigating people, whilst at the same time we're listening to music, we're having a conversation. How on earth do we do that? We don't know. But that is quite a talent. Yet we can let go and unconsciously drive through traffic and having a wonderful conversation with our friends. And we do it. That's at the base level of creativity. One level up would be perhaps the creative arts. Somebody has a wonderful creative talent at painting, at music. They express it. Another level up of creativity in the spectrum would be perhaps people who can hear a whole symphony in their minds and write it down, or creative writing. There are people who can channel writing from the creative unconscious without going through their conscious mind, and they can dictate. Neil Donald Walsh is one good example. So that's another level on the spectrum of creativity. Going higher on the spectrum of creativity, we have people who can heal at a distance, people who can do remote healing without even seeing their patient. They can heal them remotely. Going further up on the level of creativity, on the spectrum of creativity, we know people who have healed themselves from cancer, from terminal illnesses, from diseases, through tapping into the unconscious, through trusting. And at a very high end of the spectrum of creativity, we have the stories from religious traditions, and for example, Jesus and what he did. And so the spectrum of creativity is very, very broad. But we're all familiar with the spectrum of creativity at one level or the other. However, there comes a point where our conscious mind comes in and says, I can believe Beethoven composing the symphony in his head. I can limit my belief system to that, but I can't believe in people who can heal remotely or have extrasensory perception. I certainly don't believe in the teachings of the Bible and the biblical stories. We all have limits to our belief. But what happens if we don't have limits to our beliefs? And that is the power of the unconscious mind. There are no limits on the spectrum of creativity. Only our conscious mind holds us back. I can't go beyond. I can accept remote healing, but I can't accept, for example, the teachings of someone walking on water, or spontaneously healing someone, or rising someone from the dead. We all have our limits. And perhaps the only limits to the human mind are those that we believe in. So our belief limits us as human beings, limits who we are, limits what we do, limits how we interact with life. But in reality, there are no limits to the human mind. There are no limits, absolutely no limits, except those that we believe in. So how do we change our belief system? How do we tap into the unconscious, where 80% of what we do is guided, is manifested from the unconscious? There are many exercises and tools we can use, like manifestation. Who's familiar with manifestation? Manifesting something. So manifestation is a creative tool. We can all do it. You visualize a goal. You visualize an objective. You internally visualize it by using your creative mind. And you repeat this affirmation day after day, day after day. You keep this affirmation and you keep this image in your mind of whatever goal you want to achieve, whatever it is you want to achieve. And lo and behold, you achieve it. So many creative tools we can use to tap into the unconscious, the power of the unconscious mind. So we all have this universal trust within us. It is there. Do you not trust that your heart's going to pump at night when you go to bed? Do you not trust that the blood is going to flow through your veins? And we don't do this consciously. We do this unconsciously. That's where the power resides. That's where the power to tap into this universal trust resides. This universal trust is within us. We need to start paying more attention to it so we can access more of the unconscious and bring it more into the conscious realm of our minds. It's just there. There are many tools and techniques. I'm sure you're familiar with a lot of them. You can read up about them. So this is one thing I would love to leave with you. This thought that the only limits to our potential, the only limits to our creativity, the only thing that is holding us back is our own conscious mind. Within us at any given moment, there are three characters, three actors. The conscious mind that knows what it wants to do, knows what action it wants to take, knows what goals it wants. And the unconscious mind, the unconscious character, that has the power to manifest anything. And the third character is the villain. This character is that small voice in your head, that language in your head, that is stopping you from manifesting, that is stopping you from tapping into the unconscious. We all have this voice in our heads. It's always speaking to us, right? I want to do this, I want to do that, I should do this, I should go here, I want to eat this. Constantly we've got this voice within our heads. This, for some reason, is stopping us tapping into the collective unconscious mind, the well of creativity, where trust resides. We don't know why this exists. We don't know why this force is within us that always stops us from going from the conscious to the unconscious. But it is there. So our challenge, our exercise, our work is how to still that voice so that we can tap into more the universal trust that mostly resides in the unconscious. But it is there, within us all. And there's not enough time to share more techniques or more tools with you. I'm sure you're all professionals in your fields and you've got experience in doing this and you have your own ways of doing this. But we must believe that there are no limits to the human mind. Absolutely no limits. What if we fully 100% believed that there were no limits to what we can do? Can you imagine our greatness? It's so scary. And the great Nelson Mandela once said, our greatest fear is the fear of our greatness. That is our greatest fear. True, because we are so afraid of our greatness. And this always holds us back. And everything we need is on the other side of fear. And that is called trust. I thank you. Thank you.